Hello friends, today I have one DIY for you. Yep, just one, but it's two-sided. So it's kind of a 2-for-1. You're really gonna like it. I hope you really like it. Let's just get started and see. First, I have to show you this really cool grain in this piece of wood that I have. So you tell me what you see in this wood grain in the comments below. Let me know. So I took the other end of this piece of wood and I cut it, and I am going to do our DIY in it today, out of it today. So I drew first the handle of a cutting board. And so this is a 1x8, which we know is really about 7 1/4 inches, but it's a 1x8x12. So I cut them 12. And now I'm going to go turn on my scroll saw and speed this up for a video editing purposes. And I'm just going to run this around here, and voila, we're going to have a beautiful cutting board for decorative purposes only. Then you see me putting that sawdust under there. There's a little vacuum under there. So yes, I cut 40 of these bad boys and took them outside and sanded them. So I'm going to show you what I did with this one. I sanded it down. I drilled a hole up in the top for a hanger. And now I'm going to take Layered Chocolate by DIY and my mister bottle. I'm going to mist this piece of wood to make it a little bit damp. And then I'm going to take a paper towel and dry off the excess a little bit. And then I'm going to make sure that my paintbrush is nice and wet. And I'm going to put a thin layer of the Layered Chocolate and a nice wet wipe that's fresh out of the box. And I'm just going to use it to move that paint all around and wipe off the excess, and it looks like a stain. I love to use this method. I'm sure all of you know about this method. If you didn't, well, here you go. And it makes a beautiful brown stain without the smell of the stain or waiting for hours for the stain to completely dry and not be tacky. So I did this all the way around the edges and one side. Now it's completely dry. You can see the back. I haven't done anything to the back yet. I did the edges and this side in that brown. Now it is completely dry. And I'm going to take this adorable little stencil with a bee and the flowers, and I'm going to take some painter's tape, and I'm going to tape down all 4 sides. Well, I decided that tape was a little bit too wide. I'm not going to waste that tape, so we're going to cut it in half. So these stencils are really nice. I got them off of Temu, of all places, but they lay really flat and nice down on your surface. I'm going to take Farm Fresh by DIY first, and I'm going to go in with a little sponge dauber, and I'm going to paint all the leaves. Now, these sponge daubers are really nice to use for stenciling because you can use just the little edge of it, and I'm pouncing up and down, and I'm also, you can see, offloading a lot of the paint. I'm using very thin layer. I did 2 coats actually with this paint. Now I'm using also that tape to protect my flowers so that I don't get green paint on my pink flowers. So I'm going to take Petticoat Pink by DIY, and now I'm going to use just a little piece of scrap paper and lay it along the edge there to protect the other part of that I guess that's the leaf. I'm protecting the leaf. Let me see what I'm doing here. I'm protecting the leaf, and I'm just pouncing that Petticoat Pink. Now the Petticoat Pink, I'm not sure if I did 2 layers, 2 coats of it or not, because it looks like it's going on pretty thick. But yeah, I'm just using that paper to, instead of putting down painter's tape, I'm just laying that paper down and holding it down really tight. And then, ooh-wee, look at me using my left hand. Then yeah, I decide I'm not very good at left-handedness, but anyhoozle. Fun fact, both of my parents were left-handed, and my brother and I both were right-handed. Interesting, but we both were very ambidextrous because our parents taught us to do things left-handed. Okay, so I'm going to take Sandy Blonde by DIY and do the wings. I struggled with what color to do the wings because bees' wings are kind of translucent, right? So I just decided to do them this little Sandy Blonde color. And then I end up taking some Queen Bee and just adding it into, I think it was Queen Bee. Okay, I haven't done that yet. Hang on. I did Old School, which is a very charcoal gray. And you can see the parts that I did with that. And then I'm going to make the body the charcoal gray and Queen Bee. Here we go with the Queen Bee. So I'm going to make it striped with the Old School and Queen Bee. I'm going to mix the Sandy Blonde and the Queen Bee together so that it's not quite so bright as the Queen Bee, because the Queen Bee was a little bit bright for the project that I wanted to do. You see, I'm just going to use that little piece of paper, and then when I would finish, I would just rip that little piece off so that I didn't have the paint. Now I'm going to take the Queen Bee, and instead of dry brush, I'm kind of dry sponging. I'm kind of dry sponging a little bit of that on there, and when it dries down, it just gave it a little dimension. And so I did the same thing with the flowers. I used a little bit of Kissing Booth in my sponge that already had the pink in it and just sort of blended some of it out. Did the same thing, added a little darker green. I think I may have used Aviary on the flowers. On the leaves. Okay, so I'm just getting excited about this project and I can't even talk. So now I'm going to pull the transfer up, take all the tape off, and I'm just going to lift it straight up and look at those crisp edges. These stencils really are pretty nice. I'm going to take my Apothecary label stamps from IOD. These are one of my favorite stamp sets. Now, I thought I was going to put my verse on the curve, but it was too long and it wouldn't fit. Bummer. So I'm going to put Be Still and Know across the top of here with black ink. I wish I would have stamped it a little bit darker, had a little bit more ink on there, but it wasn't, and so it turns out fine. Now, you can see that I'm leaving that 1L space blank, and I had a viewer question why I do that. So I didn't realize that I didn't explain myself on that. So I'll tell you why I do that. Because there's only one of every letter in the alphabet sets for IOD. So I put the L down and then I spaced it out and put the other L down. So I know there's perfect space for the other L that I'm about to put in there now. And so I don't have to guess how much room I need. Which with that, it was the last letter. I probably could have been just fine doing it. But anyway, I thought I would do it so that I could explain myself. Okay, so I thought that the paint job was a little too stark. It looked a little bit like childlike, I thought. Okay, maybe you loved it like that. And if you do, I'm sorry. But I took the sandpaper, a really fine grit sandpaper, and I just went over it and distressed it. And this paint did not ruin the project at all, where it looks like it did, but it did not. So I just sanded. I didn't sand over the lettering, only over the painted area. And I might have sanded around the edges of the stained area a little bit. I don't really remember, but I did over that. And then I took the Dixie Belle Best Dang Clear Wax and waxed it. And I don't think it's probably the best clear wax, but I do like it. And so I'm doing it all over the front and those sides. I'm going to take my little white scrap of a t-shirt and buff it out. If you've watched my channel very long, you might think Be Still and Know is my favorite Bible verse. But it's not, actually. Watch the end of the video to see what are my favorites. Let's flip this over and do the second side. We're going to take Vintage Linen by DIY and give this one really nice thick coat. Really fast too. You like how fast I can paint? We're going to paint it on the edges. I'm being very careful to leave my paintbrush flat so that I don't get a lot of paint on the sides. The good thing about the DIY paint is that it is water-based, so you can take a damp cloth and clean that off. And so I did that a couple of times when I boo-booed and got a little bit of the white paint on the side, and that was fine. And it did wipe the brown paint off a little bit, and I did go back and touch some of that up again with the layered chocolate. But it was very, very minimal that I had to do. Okay, now it's all dry, completely dry. I'm trying to be very careful to protect the other side and not get paint or anything on it. So I'm keeping my work surface clean. I'm going to be using the IOD Mercantile stamp, and I'm also going to be using the IOD Village Market mold. Love these little farm animals. Today we're going to be using the pig and the little wheat grains. This cute little pig and these cute little wheat grains of wheat, stalks of wheat. I'm going to use faded burlap to paint them. I'm going to give it 2 coats. I did 2 coats. I did 1 coat, dried it down with the heat gun, and then did a 2nd coat. And I'm using that old stencil brush and just kind of stippling it on, pouncing it on, because that is what I like to do. Now while that dries, we're going to go get out our IOD Mercantile stamp, and we're going to use the thin mount because it works amazing. And we are going to use the grain stripe that comes with this stamp set. And I put it on my project where I want it, and then I put the thin mount on, and it sticks to it. I'm going to use the Tomato Permanent Ink by IOD. This is a beautiful kind of reddish orange color. It's a red, but it's in the orange, on the orange side of the red. And I'm going to clean around the edge of my stamp so there's not any little smears or smudges when I put this down. I'm going to hover it where I want it. I'm going to lay it down. I'm going to hold it with one hand, and I'm going to rub with the other. Now, this little tool I'm using is in my Amazon store. My friend Myra over at Farm Fresh Design 59 turned me onto this. It's a little felt, has a little felt on it, and the handle is so easy to use, and it is a stamp presser. I don't really know what it's called. That's what I call it, a stamp presser. But it is definitely in my Amazon store. If you are interested, they are very inexpensive to buy, and they are very, very handy to work with. Now we're going to go back over to our stamp set, and we are going to pull off the number 7 and the quality grains. And we're going to lay them where we want them. And I'm going to go ahead and put the little grains of wheat and the pig where we want it, so I can lay it all out exactly how we want it. Remove the molds and put the thin mount on top of those stamps, and go ahead and press it down really firmly on the thin mount so that they don't go anywhere. And then we're going to ink it up with the black permanent ink by IOD. And I'm just tapping it gently. This ink pad had fresh ink on it, and so I didn't have to press it very hard. I just barely tapped. And then I want to take a wet wipe, a baby wipe, wet wipe, and go around the edges and make sure there isn't any stray ink that's going to smudge or smear anywhere. Now I'm trying to figure out how to do this, and I was like, okay, well the number 7 was up in the right hand corner, so let's put it where it needs to go. Make sure we've got it straight, hover it, and then put it down, and don't move it. Do not let it slide. Hold it tightly, and this little tool helps it to rub down. Obviously, I'm happy about that. Then I want to take a wet wipe and make sure that I clean my stamps thoroughly, because we do not want to ruin our expensive tools. I'm going to take that faded burlap again, and I'm going to use this old stencil brush that's kind of chippy, and I'm going to dry brush some on to kind of age this little background, the background on our cutting board. And I just did it randomly where I wanted it, and then, you know, how much. So I took my heat gun and dried it completely, and then I'm going to take my little finger sander, and I'm just going to give it a quick little sand and make it look a little distressed. Just a little bit, not a lot. I'm going to take a soft cloth and get all the little grains of sand from the sandpaper off. And then I'm going to clear wax the pig and the wheat grain. I almost said wood grain, the wheat grain, because I'm going to dark wax it, but I don't want that dark wax to be super dark. So the clear wax is going to almost dilute it a little bit. So I do the clear, and then I buff back the excess so that there's not any pooling anywhere. And then I take the dark wax and just pounce, 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 and get it all down in all those details. And this, I absolutely love the way that these colors look together. And then I'm just going to take my little soft piece of an old t-shirt and buff it back a little bit, making sure that I leave enough of that dark wax in the crevices and the details. And I love how this little piggy turns out. And if you wipe back too much, you can always add a little bit more back in. I'm going to use my Titebond Quick and Thick glue for a permanent hold. I'm going to use the hot glue for a quick hold. The hot glue probably would hold this just fine, but I'm going to actually be traveling with this, and I do not want this little pig to pop off. So I'm going to glue this on and get it on there good. So you can see here I'm going to put, I just want to make sure that the hot glue and the Titebond do not touch, because they do, it's like oil and water. They do not mix well. So once I get that all glued down where I want them, and they are all in place, then I'm going to take the clear wax and I'm going to clear wax this all over. And then I will take my little soft piece of cloth and wipe off all the excess and kind of buff it down. And we're almost done. We are going to take a piece of jute cord that I put some painter's tape around the end. Put that through the hole, tie a knot in the end, and this double-sided DIY is complete. Well, first we're going to take off the painter's tape. That would be nice. Now our project is complete. Okay, well that's it. Let me know if you liked it. Leave a comment down below and let me know if you liked the two-sided 2-for-1 DIY today. If you're new to my channel, hello, my name is Kendra. You're watching Late Night Creations. I am so glad you clicked on this video today. At the time that this video is airing, I am on my way to sail on the Crafty Cruise Getaway. So stay tuned for all the details of that when I get back. But most of all, I want you to remember to be still and know that He is God. I promised you my favorite Bible verses, and they are Philippians 4:13 and 2 Corinthians 5:17.